I can't rightly say when I first heard a Zippo lighter sound, but I can remember clearly the cold air and pipe tobacco aroma associated with the use of one. My old friend Ralph, as he was accustomed to doing, would lick his lighter and fire it up and light his pipe, blowing short puffs of smoke until the bowl would glow a crimson red. Then he would again clink it closed, and that sweet fragrance of that pipe tobacco would softly fill the air. I didn't know it at the time, but those obscure moments became set in my mind by the actions and sound of him using that old Zippo lighter. If I recall correctly, he inherited the lighter from his dad, so it already had a long history to it, and by default, those moments became part of my history. He used the pipe and the Zippo just about every place he managed to find himself. But my memories are locked more onto the hunting and fishing adventures we shared together. You see, Ralph was somewhat, maybe even considerably older than the rest of us. A mentor of sorts, although he would never have admitted to it. In spite of his age, we the younger had a hard time keeping up with him. We enjoyed many rendezvous across the years of building a reserve of memories that served us well. As Ralph aged, he approached another rendezvous with life, and that collided with a condition called multiple myeloma. In spite of his condition, he continued to fish and get out as much as he could until he just could no longer do so. And his Zippo lighter were there with him all along the way. And when he finally did pass away, he left behind a legacy of living that words can never fully define. What I understand now that I did not then is that we need to have those Zippo lighter moments for no other reason than to lock into place what it means to be a friend. And even though he was not actively trying to teach such admirable traits, he did manage to get the point across to us without even knowing it. Yet Ralph was more than a friend, more than a mentor. He was a maker of timeless memories, and the clink of that old lighter became the stamp of approval that solidified the texture and flavor of those adventures. I harbor few regrets, but when I recently heard again the clink of a Zippo lighter, I realized that my life since Ralph left us has exhibited far too few of those moments, and I do treasure the small number that were made, and can only hope that a simple sound coming from a classic lighter will stir within me not only more self-awareness, but a greater desire to become a maker of timeless moments. And even though I do not smoke, I purchased a shiny new Zippo lighter for myself, and on those melancholy days when my mind is set adrift and I forget why I enjoyed going on those adventures, I'll flick the lid to hear that clink and use it as a reminder. So please join me as we take a look back at some Zippo lighter moments. My last outing, I mentioned I was going to start sharing some outdoor adventure stories that I've labeled Zippo Lighter Moments. Zippo Lighter Moments. And they're in reference to my old buddy Ralph, who loved to smoke a pipe, and he used a Zippo lighter to light it with. It was an old lighter when he had it. But it was a classic. It had that classic. Let's see if I can get mine out here. It had that classic clink on the zip sound to it. I don't know if you can hear this one or not. That poof. Those Zippo Lighter Moments are some of the most memorable ones that I have ever experienced out in the outdoors. One in particular one probably was one of the most amazing days that I've ever had. outdoors. And it was just Ralph and I were together. And we went up to where I was going to meet him up at Canton Lake. We lived in Oklahoma at the time. I lived in Oklahoma at the time. Of course, he lived there all his life. But we were going to go up to Canton Lake. It's late in January, sometime in January I think it was. It was cold, and the goose season was just about to end, I believe, if I remember right. There's some late season goose hunting, and there was a peninsula that stuck out a little ways, and the lake was over on this northwest side of it. The lake was low that year. I'm not sure why, but they had lowered the lake level down. But it was one of those things where it was just an amazing morning, and he was going to meet me up there, and it was about an hour and a half drive for me, and probably about a little over 2 hour drive for him to get up there. And look at this waterfall again. But he's going to meet me up there, and I got up really early that morning and made the drive, got to the parking area there, and it took a few minutes to get kind of geared up, loaded up, and it was chilly. It was still pitch black. The sky was perfectly clear. There was no moon out, a lot of stars, and I kind of walked along the edge of the lake out toward this peninsula, and there was some ice on right along the edge there. It was cold enough to start freezing the lake up a little bit. And I walked out on that peninsula, and about halfway out, maybe 2/3 way out, was this little group of old willow trees laying there, kind of gnarly looking things, and growing out there. And I just kind of stopped right there, and it was still just pitch black. Couldn't hardly, there was a little bit of a light glow on the horizon, but not much of one. And as I sat there, wasn't sure when Ralph was going to be there, but as I sat there, I could hear off in the distance a bunch of ducks quacking and scurrying around, and I could hear a goose or two honk every now and then. And the horizon started getting a little bit brighter and a little bit brighter, and there were some low clouds hanging over that horizon back there. And as the day got brighter, as the morning got brighter, the activity with the ducks got more and more and more active. I'd be standing there and I'd hear a flight just go right over me, and I'd hear another flight go over me. There was pintails, there was mallards, there were wood ducks, there was gadwall. I mean, every kind of duck you can imagine out there, and they were zipping by me. It wasn't even shooting time yet, but I could see them, and they were buzzing, and I could hear geese way off in the distance honking. And it was just one after another, just hundreds of them. And eventually the horizon got a little bit lighter. And there was this red, orangey red glow with these fingers of light coming up through the clouds. And just as that sun popped up over the horizon, I mean, it was like a spotlight came on, and it just shot across the lake. And there's a little bit of light fog on the water, but not much. And it just shot across the lake and just lit that lake up. The whole lake was fire red. It was just orange and red, and it was just an amazing moment. And I just set my shotgun down, and there were thousands and thousands of ducks that got up off that water just as that sun came up. And I mean, it was just, it was like a roar almost from them getting up off the water. And they were flying by the hundreds, past me and over me and around me, and some of them would sit down in front of me, and I didn't care. I just set the shotgun to one side and just sat there and watched it. There were geese getting up, and they were flying and honking, and after a little while, I heard some footsteps kind of coming down that peninsula, and it was Ralph. He'd got there finally, but he walked up to me, and he had this big old grin on his face. He goes, "Boy, oh boy." That's one of his famous sayings, "Boy, oh boy."
Boy, I said, what a morning. I said, have you ever seen such a thing? You know, and I just laughed. I said, man, this is incredible. Absolutely incredible. And he pulls that pipe out, taps it, pulls that lighter out, clink, do that puffing and puffing, and the smoke. And he was silhouetted against that sunrise. And that smoke coming off that pipe, and that sweet fragrance from it. And I mean to tell you, it was one of the most magical moments I've ever seen. I did not have any camera at all. I didn't even have a disposable camera or anything. The whole thing was just captured in my mind. And it was just, you talk about a classic Zippo Lighter moment. And that was it. And we stayed around there for a long time, never even picked our shotguns up. We just watched it. And eventually it kind of settled down some, and we started kind of walking around a little bit more. But I'll never, ever forget that moment. Even though that it was probably, in some ways, it's probably best that I didn't have a camera, because the vivid images I have right here and right here, there's no way a camera could ever capture that. And that, my friends, is the first episode, the first installment of our Zippo Lighter Moments. And I hope I can share more of these with you as time goes on.